Welcome to the number 2 meeting of our challenge, or our Swift Auto Challenge. It is excellent to have you here, and I am excited to dig in today. Looks like we already have some wonderful people here. Welcome, come on in, folks. We're going to be getting started here in just a minute. Before we do, though, I'd like to maybe if everyone who is here, so I see a few people in the comments have already introduced themselves, maybe if everybody else, if you are watching, please just drop your name in the comments. Nobody's going to call you names or anything like that. We're a very friendly bunch of people here, and it's really great to know who's on, maybe what part of the world you are from. We've already kind of gotten that started. We have somebody here from Romania and UK, Brazil, let's see here, Italy, and I'm probably missing a couple others. So yeah, come on in, introduce yourself and where you are currently located. That'll be great to see you here. Today we're going to talk about how to study. Studying is a very important topic, and we're going to get as practical as possible. So we're going to dive in simply because I want you studying in the right direction. And there's a number of aspects to this that are very important to understand. Once you do, it's not like there's any learning that it takes or practice that it takes place to study well. Mostly it just comes down to the proper technique. Once you have this technique, you are on the road to success, which is my number one goal in this time here today. Wow, we got a lot of you guys coming in here. Netherlands and India, New Jersey, Ireland, Ukraine, Michigan, yep, India, California. Boy, okay, I do have to make one comment. This person, Andy from California, that reminds me. It just is makes you really appreciate the nice warm weather when we're sitting here in the middle of Kansas in, it's probably about 0 Celsius, 32 degrees here right now. It's just kind of chilly. You don't really feel like going outside. But in California, I remember those a couple years ago, my wife and I, we did a baby moon out in California, San Diego, in the beginning of January. And that was just nice. That was really nice. We were escaping I think it was closer to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know exactly what that would translate. Would that be negative 15 Celsius, maybe, possibly? I'm not exactly sure. It was just really nice getting some warm weather. So, there we go. Some more UK and India. Excellent. Well, this is awesome. Welcome. Come on in, and we're going to be getting started here. So, a quick review of what we talked about last week, and that is what test is for me. It's very important that we start off on the right test, the right topic, because if we don't, we're set up for disaster. And my biggest case in point is this area of the professional versus the expert. And I'm using the new names here. The previous names was associate and professional. That name of professional, anyways, in my opinion, it was not the best choice of rename because there's now such confusion. When you say you took the professional test and passed or failed, which professional? Is it the previous associate, or is it the previous associate, or the, i.e. now professional, or is it the previous professional, now expert? A little bit confusing. But what test is for me? Focus on the right test. If you have not yet taken a test, and I know there's quite a few of you who are joining for the first time this week, I want to make a very clear plea, if you will, that you do not take the expert test, the expert developer test, unless you have already taken and passed the professional test, professional previously associate test. You have to start with the associate/professional test, and then you can move up from there. Otherwise, I have seen it happen way too often. Failure occurs, and it's an easy failure to prevent. Now, could you pass the expert on the first time? Absolutely, it's definitely possible. I've seen it happen, but more often than not, I've not been able to fully determine whether it's not good study or in practice, or if it's just very difficult to do, and i.e. difficult meaning some people will do it to be able to pass the expert on the first try. One thing I do know is that there is a certain level of experience required to pass a Magento test. And I'm not talking about the experience of using Magento. I'm talking about the experience of taking a Magento test. If if you've taken one, you know what I'm talking about, because there's what's called scenario-based questions, and in a couple of weeks we'll be talking through this type of question, how to properly answer it. But these scenario-based questions can be a little bit tricky to get in the hang of. Once you do get in the hang of it, you're good. But starting with a less difficult test, or a test that's not covering as advanced of a subject, it's a good idea to start there and then work up. Otherwise, if you start at the very top, you might very likely is going to take at least 2 tries. 2 tries to get one test versus starting with the professional, get that, move up to the expert, get that. Now you have 2 certifications on your belt. 2 certifications always looks better than 1 certification. Andy asked a question here. He said, doesn't like 2-year expiration for certifications. Unless you're seeing something that I have not seen, I am not aware of a certification expiration yet. Now, this is the year, though, that Magento or Adobe has said that they will decide on a expiration, but I have not actually heard of what the expiration will be and if there will be one. They've said that there will likely be one, but this is the year that they will make that decision, and then those certifications will be expired sometime in the future. So that's something to keep in mind. At least that is the latest information I have heard. Please feel free to drop in the comments, Andy, if you have seen anything different there. All right. Oh, wow, we got Serbia here. Yeah, this is awesome. Oh, Richard said it's going to be 95 there in Rio in Brazil. So I'm not sure what that translates out to be in Celsius, but Fahrenheit, that's a very nice warm day. That would sound really good today. Okay. And Martin on the Austrian Alps. Wow. Talk about probably one of the most beautiful places on earth to live. The Austrian Alps. That is excellent. All right. So in keeping with what I like to do for every week, I like to give shout outs. If I missed your name, forgive me. Please drop your name in the comments and I will definitely get you added. So we have these folks who have passed their tests this past couple weeks, and this is awful early, which makes me really excited because it's like we're off to a really good start because we already have people in the last 2 weeks passing their tests. And I hope that this number continues through the next few weeks, and it's certainly going to hopefully exponentially increase as we get towards the end of March, where more people start taking and passing their tests. So congratulations, Darth and Lionel, Wilson, and Gary. Thank you for sharing your experiences. Now, and actually, that's one other thing I want to call out. When you do pass your test, please don't be shy. Please drop that in the comments or on our Slack channel. You'll have lots of people congratulating you, but you'll also have something you can do that's very important to help out the community, and that is to share your experience. Whether you passed or failed, we are here for you. We want to see you pass, and so that means that you need to share your experience. So what was difficult, what was hard, but one thing, don't share the test questions. That would be breaking your NDA, so don't do that. But there's a whole bunch of information about this that you can share, and I know everybody is hungry to hear about this test and what does it take to pass this test and what information can you share with them. All right, just checking to make sure we get caught up on the comments here. We have some meetups again. Looks like us, and I'm probably mispronouncing your name, Serhi and Martin work together. So that's great. You know, it's a small world. So anyways, congratulations to those who passed their tests. I am thrilled for you, and hey, there's always room to pass more tests, so don't forget to be able consider taking another test here in this time, which would double your chances of winning an Apple Watch. All right, so the purpose of today's conversation is to talk about how to study, and I want to present to you some fundamental ideas here for how you should approach your study. And some of this is, well, it's really critical that you understand study as this. Every minute you spend studying is critical to you passing the test. And I know that sounds incredibly profound, but it is. And here's why. I don't have my phone here on me right now, but let's say I'm just studying, or my email's open on one of my screens here, and an email pops in. I stop studying. I read this email, and then I see there's a Facebook or a LinkedIn message that pops up my phone. So I go look at that for a little while, and then I come back to where was I at studying wise? So what was I studying? I completely lose the train of thought that I'm on. And as such, it kind of resets the clock. It kind of turns that clock back a little bit, which means that I just basically, I wasted more than just that time I spent reading that LinkedIn post or Twitter, or that tweet, excuse me. I wasted more time than just that. It actually reset my clock back into the time I was productively studying. That's why it's so important to block out all distractions. Turn off your email, flip your phone over, put it in the other room. I recently read a study how people with their phone on their desk, even if it was flipped over, are still more likely to be distracted than those who had their phone in a separate room. Totally inaccessible. So don't check your email before you study. Also, as a thing to keep your mind completely laser focused in on this study topic that you are working through. So don't check email before you study and eliminate all distractions. It is really important. All right, so how do I study? All right, so let's dig into this. First, I said no distractions. If you are working through a developer exam, if that is what you are preparing for, you need a local development environment. What I mean by that, let's see here. I mean a system whereby you log in to open up PHP Storm. You have Xdebug enabled, and this is absolutely critical. I am in the final phases of, and I'm really excited about this, final phases of writing a book that I call The Art of Debugging. And I'll share more with you all through this certification challenge. You'll be the first ones to hear about this. But basically, it talks about how to become a proficient and excellent, a great developer when approaching solving problems. And specifically in an e-commerce context. It's not just writing any software applications, but specifically in an e-commerce context. This area of Xdebug, my friends, having a good development environment set up where you have a web server, Apache or Nginx, you have MySQL, you have Elasticsearch, you have Redis, all of this configured is incredibly important. You will not be a great developer, and I will go on a limb to say this, but you will not be a great developer unless you have a local development environment configured. It's a must. It is an absolute must, and that carries through to this test that you're studying for as well. So, I want to quickly review what is this local development environment, or how does Xdebug work? Again, in helping you prepare for this test. Because actually, let me ask this as a question. That would be a great question to ask. How many of you have a local development environment with a debugger or Xdebug configured? So more we're talking about backend developers, but this covers everybody who is studying for professional developer, previously associate, expert developer, previously professional, professional developer plus, now it's master architect, previously professional developer plus. Let's see here. Not front end. Well, a little bit of front end, not JavaScript. A little bit of cloud too. So I'd be really curious to know how many of you have this set up. All right, so let's answer a couple questions while you are answering my question. Andy, yeah, so that's how long do the certifications last? That is the Adobe FAQ frequently asked questions as far as my understanding for non-Magento certifications. Magento certifications have a different frequently asked questions, and they are my understanding is that decision has not been made yet. So I hopefully should be one of the first people to know when that decision is made, and it should happen this year. But as of this point, to the best of my knowledge and my understanding, there is no expiration date for Adobe's Magento certifications. Oh, yes, that's a good point. Xdebug 3 is out. So I'm actually using that on my local development environment here. And that is, I actually think it's significantly faster. Laura, yes, going for business practitioner. You can tune out just for a little bit, but we'll be talking about how to study for Business Practitioner here in just a few seconds. Yes. Visual Studio Code wanted to do with Docker. Yep, I do. Okay. All right. So yes, and I apologize. Those of you that are on Business Practitioners, this is not going to be as applicable to you. But I have enough people that are studying for these that this is absolutely critical to. So we're just going to take a brief diversion here. All right. Good. Okay. So Xdebug. Basically, what this is a debugger tool where it's a tool that helps you step through code. So, for example, if we wanted to see how an order is placed, we set a breakpoint in the code, and we can step line by line through how this order is placed. We can see all the variables for a given scope. Let me come over here to this. I'm going to click into it, viewing an order. This is actually the project here that I have pulled up is I have it loaded for, this is the project that I have for the associate/professional developer test. I have a whole course built out for this. And in fact, in this course, we build out a module to push orders into a third-party API. So this is basically what I built out to help work through every one of these steps. And we'll talk about why and how this is important. So anyways, the debugger has broken here. It has stopped here. And I can look in and I can see what variables are configured at this specific place where this debugger has been paused. So I can see this, the order service, what variables are set for them, the server, you get the picture. Everything is here and available. I can step in. So I see this order service get. I'll step in here. This order repository get. I can use the immediate evaluation window to get the value from running a particular method. This is like insight into what you are debugging. This is everything you need to learn and to solve problems pretty much found right here in one box. This gives you all the tools that you need. So if you do not have a system set up, there is a few that I would definitely recommend. Mark Schust has a Docker environment. Is it Docker Gento? There's Warden, and those are and Valet Plus. Those are the three most commonly used ones. I actually use a kind of a custom environment, but those are the three most commonly used ones that I see and highly recommend. You have to get at least one. You have to get one of those systems set up. You have to. For Windows, you can use XAMPP, XAMPP. Maybe there's another P at the end to be able to run. It's for Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Or you have MAMP for Mac, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So that development environment should come with Xdebug installed and configured. Make sure you have that set up. It's super easy. It might take you an hour or two, maybe a whole day to get that set up. But the time you save in the long run will be significantly worth it. Let's catch up on some questions here. All right. Okay, Charles. Yep, that is good points. Took a week off to study, but spent the entire week trying to set up a development environment. So I hope you got it set up, Charles, because I think a week would be pushing my patience if I had to spend a whole entire week on there. Okay. Okay, let's see here. What code editor? This is PHP Storm here that I use for all my development. Charles had that nailed already. I'm just still working through the comments. Arnold's, yes, found quite a few issues with Valet Plus. I never had good success with that. I love the idea. It's a brilliant idea. And it should work quite simply, but it just didn't for me. And I think the issue for me was I eventually got it broken down to the debugger was the problem. It just would not. Well, actually, it was really slow if I remember correctly. I could not get it fast. I could not get it fast at all. And ultimately, anytime you do have the debugger on, it will slow your environment down. So if you're working with bundled products on a Magento Commerce installation, boy, is it going to be slow, even with the debugger properly configured. And you're trying to debugger off, it gets much faster. So do keep that in mind. The debugger shouldn't necessarily be on all the time. I do leave mine on pretty much all the time, but that debugger is the key to unlocking the Magento application to your understanding as you prepare to get certified. Okay, very good. Awesome. Well, this is great. So I hope I provided some encouragement to those of you who do not already have a local development environment set up. And the reason I'm talking about this is, per my conversations, there's a lot of people that do not have a local development environment set up or properly configured with Xdebug. I remember the old days of using var dump and print_r. That just doesn't work. So debugger is absolutely critical. Okay. All right. So the commerce environment for Business Practitioner. Business Practitioner. So Serhi and Lori, and I think they're and Richard. I know Richard's been working on this, and Serhi as well, using our course. But Business Practitioner is a bit of a different beast. Business Practitioner is much more abstract than the developer tests. When I say abstract, there's conversations about PCI compliance on there. There's conversations about GDPR. There's conversations about performance enhancement on there. So all of this that's why I say the Business Practitioner is one of the most difficult tests you can undertake. Expect it to be super, super hard. But one thing that also makes it I think complicates this difficulty is that a commerce environment is required. So for those of you who do not, or who are maybe freelancers or on your own, and you would like to get the Business Practitioner, you have to have a commerce environment, and that's one of the biggest keys to passing this test. Otherwise, it's more or less, I'm going to say, hopeless. You have to have experience. There's conversations about the loyalty programs. There's conversations about B2B. Let's see here. B2B loyalty, gift cards, and I don't know. I'm missing off 3 or 4 other sections. So there's a ton of commerce-related questions on there that you have to have commerce access in order to be able to pass that. Yep. So MSI, yes. Yeah, thank you. Page builder and content staging. I knew I was missing a couple of things. Yes, content staging is hammered, absolutely hammered on this test. So make sure, again, you have to have a commerce environment. Otherwise, it is literally not worth studying for. Even if you have access to a merchant's commerce environment, be very, 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 very careful. But that would probably suffice. Just don't make hardly any changes. It will reduce the amount of freedom you can take, your liberty in a given environment if you are working on a merchant's environment. So again, be very, very careful. But having your own commerce environment is critical. So, and yes, we'll jump in. We'll wait till the next section to talk about how to study. And the other thing is yep, there you go. Visual merchandiser, customer segments. Yes, I knew it, folks. Thank you. Yes, that is good. So, commerce, all these topics, as far as, and we'll get into some practical ideas on how to study them here in just a minute. Let's talk about then the final thing, a block of time. You want to be consistent, no distractions, but set this 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever you can possibly do. Set that time aside every day. Make that commitment. And I suggest you make that commitment now. Write it down on a piece of paper. I commit to spend X amount of time, however many times a week. It does not have to be 7 days a week, but I suggest at least 4 days a week. The very, very minimum should be 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week. That is the very minimum. If you want to boost it past that, great. But one thing to be aware of is do not set so high a time that you will get burned out. You see, like these New Year's resolution diets, people, and believe me, I've had my fair share. We think, oh, well, I need to lose a few pounds. So I say, well, we're just going to, well, actually, that was more when I was back in my family's house. So we would go on this really strict diet. All of us hated it. And you know what? It didn't last. But when there is gradual changes, where there is things where you just slowly get rid of things, boy, I found that has worked a lot better. Where it's palatable. You're changing your taste buds one at a time, versus trying to change your taste buds 50 at a time. You see what I'm saying? So take small bites toward this test, but small but maintainable bites toward this test. Practice and in consistent amounts of time. So 15 minutes a day, 4 times a week at the very minimum, but hopefully more than that, depending on how you're feeling about this test. One thing, yes, Richard, you bring up a really, really good point. And I should have put a slide in here for this. Schedule your test today. Schedule that test today. If you don't schedule that test, you have no push toward forcing yourself to taking that test. You know, it's like, well, I'll take it at the end of March. I'll take it. You know what? This big project came up, and nope, I can't take it at the end of March. Well, end of April. That's not that much further. You see how this goes, my friends. So Richard is very wise. He had a great point. Schedule that dang test today. Okay, can we do that? Can you commit to that? Drop that in your comments here in the comments. If you will schedule your test today, we're going to work you toward passing that test. We will work you towards that. But we need to get that test scheduled. In fact, one thing I thought about, if this would be helpful, is and drop this in the answer to this in the comments. Is I've thought about so our certification meetings are every other Saturday, and that's more talking about general conversations. But I've thought about scheduling a half an hour or an hour on the call it the off Saturdays, to talk about anything developer related, or we might also schedule some time for business practitioner. I haven't done official live courses on that, but I'd really be curious to know, what are the hangups, what are people getting stuck on as far as studying for material for the test. So if you think that'd be helpful, let me know. Drop it on Slack, DM me, send me an email, however you want to reach me. But I would be really interested to hear if this is an interest to just more than one person, if you in that way. Okay, Jackie. Well, she's been afraid to pass the developer exam because barely passed the business practitioner test. Yes, and to be really clear, Jackie, if you so when I know of your job, you should be quite close to passing the even the professional developer exam, previously associate. The one thing to keep in mind is, again, from what I know of your job, you're not actually writing code, you are troubleshooting a lot of code. So you're going to have some, you will have to do still some study, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere as difficult as what you, the amount of time and effort you put into passing the business practitioner. Okay. All right. Yes, so let's get those tests scheduled today. And that is going to be your assignment from this, from our conversation here today. Get your test scheduled. I think I answered the question. So again, make sure to get that test scheduled. And number 2, I'm really interested to hear if a separate meeting that's specifically focused on the developer side and the business practitioner side, if that would be helpful. And I'm very willing to do that because, again, I want to see you guys pass your tests. And sometimes it might be really helpful to take some extra time, work through the study guide together, which is the way I would approach this. Work through it together, call out some important points, and provide studying suggestions for each one of those points. Okay, Darth, what is the time frame should look into? Yes, so that I would suggest, depending on your experience. Well, let me ask this. Hi, Darth, how much experience do you have? And this is more project management related, or as a solution specialist is what the name previously was. More or less, you're account manager, account manager, project manager, maybe a salesperson. You are interacting. You're the liaison, the go-between between a developer and the merchant. So you need to know some developer speak, and you need to know a lot of merchant speak of the language, and be able to effectively communicate between the two. So I'm curious, how much experience do you have in that type of work there? Bargav said 1 month or less. So sounds like Bargav knows Darth. So that's great. Good. John has scheduled his test, so that's great. Keep that up. John, feel free to drop in the comments again, and let's be a good community. Let's be a community here. Let us know when you're going to take the test, and we'll wish you good luck and hope that and good thoughts that you will pass here. Lori, how do I schedule? We'll talk about that in an upcoming session if you want to wait till then. But basically, you're just going to go to Adobe's website, learning.adobe.com/certifications.html, or you just type in Adobe certifications, and it's right now. It's on the front page of the certification. Just click on the test that you want to take, and there is a blue register now button that you can click on to do that. Okay, Andy, that sounds good to you. Okay, let's see. You're looking technical architect. Not only 3 years. Yeah. So depending on what you've taken, I can't remember what test you had taken. Hi, Darth. Let's see here. Cloud developer. Yeah. The expert developer is probably a great test as well for you. Okay. Let's jump into study techniques. We're gonna. Well, we talked about developer last time in looking at the local development environment configuration, and then we talked about business practitioner second. Let's first talk about business practitioner, and all you devs can tune out just for a minute, although please don't tune out. All right, so let's take a look at this study guide. So here's the SwiftOtter study guide. But more or less, the Magento study guide is pretty much this table of contents with just another sentence or two of information, usually below each one of these. Okay. Yes. So, how do we approach this study guide? What are we going to do with this? So, e-commerce. And actually, you know what? Let me just, if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up the Adobe study guide for business practitioner. Business practitioner. Oh, well, actually, Laura, you said you had that question. So here is the the Adobe certification page. Business practitioner is this one here. Of course, the icons are not differentiatable, so it's a little bit hard to see which is which. Scroll down to here. Here's the study guide, and here's where you register. You'll have to log in with an Adobe ID. Create one if you don't have it. Okay, so here is the study guide. So we click on English next to that study guide. And we scroll down. So a couple of things. First, who's this for? What do you need to know in order to be able to take this test? Again, none of the Magento Adobe certifications, vice versa. Adobe Magento certifications have an actual experience requirement. You technically could have no experience, have all the knowledge necessary to pass, and then you go take the test. So there's no requirements past that. Here is what the study guide looks like. And we'll talk about how to study for each one of these sections, go through it. And then there's I take that back. I was going to say a few. On some of the developer tests, there is more than one practice test question. On this one, which is, of course, it's free, there's only one question. Okay, there used to be more, I thought. All right, so let's look at how do we do this? How do we study on this test? All right, so we see 1.1, demonstrate ability to configure SEO features in Magento. Marketing strategies, omni-channel, multi-channel SEO, affiliate marketing, social marketing, email marketing. And then what are the principal methods of natively improving SEO in Magento 2 projects? Now, one thing I always keep in mind is these titles, 1.1, I treat it as its own thing to investigate usually. Demonstrate ability to configure SEO features in Magento is, in almost every format, it's different than what are the principal methods of natively improving SEO in Magento projects. So I kind of flatten these out. So it's like 1.1.1, this is 1.1.1, this is 1.1.2, 1.1.3. And that's how I approach studying this. So we would say, what are the what is the ability to configure SEO features in Magento? Well, what Magento SEO features are available? Well, user guide. That's where this test, I'm going to say, becomes more difficult. Because if you are a beginner, if you have not been in the Magento admin panel a huge amount, you're going to keep coming up against the answer, well, I don't know. So that's where Google comes in to help. And again, I'm going to throw our study guide out, and I also have a course for this that has been quite effective. So that will help accelerate your research process for this. But if you want to do it for free, is no problem. You can do it for free. So basically, this is the Magento user guide. As dev docs are to a developer, so is the Magento user guide to you business practitioner studiers. You need to get in and read through this user guide, become really familiar with it. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to actually read through the study guide, and while you're reading through it, click into the applicable admin area section, work through that, understand exactly what it's doing. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to catch up on a couple questions here. Wow, I think I really missed a few here. It's okay. John said he passes exam last July with a SwiftOtter test exam. Well, I'm very glad to hear that. Yeah, so actually, and Richard, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to use your studying as an example here. So Richard is working through the business practitioner course, and before he took the course, or before he took the test, what I've been working through, just again help make sure that we are 100% covered on this. He went through and he took the practice test, and we're going to kind of cover this in detail later. But for those of you who are about to take the test, maybe this week or in the next couple of weeks, I want to review this. He took the practice test, which helped highlight different areas that were slightly weak in his studying, and he was zoomed out on those, and he worked to review these areas using the user guide, using the study guide, using just working through the Magento admin panel in those specific areas, taking those actions, researching and studying that. That's really, really important when working with the practice test. And again, we'll talk about how to use the practice test in a little bit, or well, in a upcoming week. Leonardo discovered Magento 6 months ago and started to develop 4 months ago. Very good. Good job. So you are just getting started out, my friend. Leonardo asks if we think that he can do the exam in May. I assume we're talking about the professional developer exam. And if that is the case, and if you are willing to put in some good time into that test, the answer is yes. 100% believe that you can pass that test in May, which, we're almost all the way through January. So that's about 3.5 months. So I definitely believe you can do that. And again, if I can, so I don't want it to seem like I'm pushing my product in the slightest. I take that very seriously. I am not a salesperson at this, but something to consider is using a Magento study course. And there's a couple out there. I know Mark Schust has one, but the one that I have written is specifically designed for the associate or professional developer test, as well as kind of with an idea of providing a lot of solid knowledge for how to get started in Magento development. So just to keep that in mind. Serhi said passing at home was awful. Okay, yes, I get that. And to be frank, I don't think I've taken a one of those at-home tests since Adobe took over Magento certification. So I don't really have a good experience on that. We'll talk about where to take tests in the future. I have some examples there. Okay. Wow, sounds like PSI tweeted you really nice there, Serhi. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so I think we're caught up. Yeah, Richard says yes. So that's I think that's one of the bigger challenges. So we can so back to business practitioner here, my friends. We can study the Magento admin. We can read the user guide. We can understand this, but where it becomes murky is as we are studying these extraneous concepts. So, for example, let me go back to here. So when it says demonstrate ability to configure SEO features in Magento, that's specifically Magento related. I think you and I would agree that's Magento related. However, this one right here is not specifically Magento related. Omnichannel, what is that? Multi-channel, what is that? You got to come up with good definitions for this. But the one consolation here is questions that are written and that are included in this test are always related back to well-known articles in the industry or things in Magento. And I think basically almost all of them, I'm going to say at least 90%, relate back specifically to Magento in one way, even if they are more extraneous knowledge. For example, like SEO. But you're going to need to know some of those concepts about SEO. Omnichannel, there might be questions about that, but there's going to be no definition questions. So what is the definition of omnichannel? That question will not be on the test. But it would be a way as how does this relate practically? A merchant wants to configure an omnichannel experience. What would be some important aspects that must be included in the Magento installation in order to achieve omnichannel status? It's thinking about that in practical terms as opposed to definitions or things that are related to memorization. So again, back to SEO. What are some important SEO terms? What are some analytics that are associated with SEO? This is all stuff that needs to be worked through, be researched, and you want to become an expert at each one of these topics. Okay. Yes, Leonardo, and I'm going to throw this out there. I've been working through a system because I understand that the dollar, I don't know if the dollar is particularly strong right now or if that's just how it always is, but I've definitely gotten some feedback that the dollar to whatever currency conversion is not really very good. And so feel free to send me an email if in those cases. And what I really appreciate knowing is the percentage of a given product compared to your salary for a month, because I'm trying to build a system whereby I can make it roughly equal across the world. Because to me, I think that's only fair. Like it's 1%. It's not 1%. It's a certain percentage for people in the United States, and it should be about that same percentage for everybody else, roughly, give or take, throughout the rest of the world. So please, if you feel that your currency to the U.S. dollar conversion is particularly poor, send me an email, outline that information. I want to hear from you because, again, I want this information in the hands of all of you. So please take a moment and send me an email there. Okay. Yes, that's good. I appreciate that. That is really good feedback. Thank you. So again, send me an email. And I'm particularly keen to know what the how this whatever product you want to purchase compares to your salary for a month. And if you want to just give me percentages or whatever, I keep it totally confidential. I'm not sharing with anybody, but that helps me calculate this out for what is a reasonable price for in your currency. Okay, so let's move on. Demonstrate understanding of securing in Magento project. What is the meaning of PCI compliance? Okay, so the good news is PCI compliance is readily understood. There's lots of documents all over online. What is PCI compliance? Now, what effects do PCI compliance have on a website? Okay, how does this affect a Magento installation? And this will involve reading through the PCI compliance guidelines. And every one of those, you're thinking, how would this apply to the business practitioner test? I.e., how would this apply to Magento? I go through each one of those. I say, okay, maybe there is a rule for the every admin user needs to have their own user account. Well, that's honestly, I think Magento 2's made that a little more streamlined. For some reason, Magento 1, there was a lot of places that seem to share one admin account, which is just dumb. But that is a PCI compliance rule. So that would be something, well, maybe that certainly applies to Magento. So maybe there could be a question like that around on the test, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to go through each one of these. What's the difference between TLS and SSL? Well, what the heck is TLS and what is SSL? Well, use Google. Say, okay, what is TLS? And there should be a description about that. What's SSL? There should be a description about that. What security features exist in Magento 2? Well, drop in the security features in Magento 2 into Google. Go into the study or into user guide here. Let's see here. Let's see if this works. Security features. Admin sign-in, locked user. Well, that's a couple, right? That's a good start. And I think we can probably find a few more security features. Go into the Magento admin. I had it right here. Let's go back to, we'll stop this. We'll refresh it. Go into the Magento admin system configuration. What security features are available there? This is how we need to approach. Actually, let's turn my debugger off so you don't have to watch it. So, for example, let's come into stores configurations. Let's advanced admin. What other security features are available? Well, here's a security section. Admin account sharing, yes or no? Well, that's what allow you to share user accounts. Not a very good idea. Password reset protection. We have all of these here. Well, what other things? We have CAPTCHA. Enable CAPTCHA. Oh, this is that terrible CAPTCHA. I hope everybody has that turned off. It's completely unusable. It's those little characters as opposed to Google reCAPTCHA, which is significantly better. Although Cloudflare has that new CAPTCHA format. CAPTCHA starts with an H, and that's really bad too. So, there's a whole bunch of these features. Now, the other thing is some of these features are not necessarily labeled as security. Admin base URL. Do you have a custom admin URL? Is it your website /admin? That is literally the admin URL. Or set a custom admin path. Well, you can easily do that. Whatever you want it to be. That would be more secure than /admin. So that also can be used as a security feature. So it takes this approach of working through every aspect of the admin panel, of the front end, becoming an expert on every one of these topics. And I want to call out, if you are researching this and you say, what are typical usability principles and issues? I don't want to study that. And just say, okay, well, I'm just going to skip on. ADA compliance, no, that sounds really hard. GDPR, I'm just going to go to data analytics. Every section that you do not choose to work through and study very diligently, you are more than likely going to get questions wrong in that area. So leave no stone unturned. Push towards understanding every subject in the study guide. Okay, so hopefully that was a good overview for Business Practitioner. Now, I think you'll notice that quite a few of these things apply over to developers. So developers, if you are listening, please take a moment here to tune back in, and we'll talk about what you're wanting to do here. All right, so read a section of the study guide. And for you developers, it's going to look almost identical. We can come back to right here, Adobe. Let's do this one, Expert Commerce Developer. And by the way, one thing to know is of this catalog right here, it says Magento Commerce Developer, but you do not need to have commerce in order to be able to take this test. And only ones that is applicable to commerce is Master Magento Commerce Architect and Business Practitioner. I'm going to say those are the only two. There is a couple of questions on front-end developer, but if you don't have access, or on front-end developer about Page Builder, if you do not have access to Page Builder, it's one or two questions. Just make sure to study a little bit extra, and one or two questions will not affect your ability to pass the test. Cloud developer does require the cloud environment, so you want that in order to be able to pass the test, but it's not technically commerce. All right, so let's, yep, this is the right one. Let's work through a little bit of this study guide. Okay. Oh, one thing to note here, we see 60 questions and a passing mark of 64. Basically, you can miss one out of every 3 questions and you will still pass the test. That's how it works. Okay, so the nice thing about the developer ones is that this is a little bit more concrete. This is, we have the capability, there's not as many abstract concepts on these developer tests as, maybe there's almost none. Security might be the only thing, and I don't know if this one covers security. I'm scrolling down to see. No, it does not. So these concepts are a little bit more concrete. All right, so we see describe Magento's module-based architecture. Describe module limitations. How do modules interact with each other? What side effects can come from this interaction? All right, so this would tell me that how do different modules interact with each other? Well, how do they interact? Well, we can go here and, well, how would we define a module? We come in here, Etsy, module, looks like that's one way to define a module. We can also go into DevDocs, search for how to define a module there. We have our module, but we'll see in DevDocs that we can specify a sequence, which means that this will be loaded after Magento sales, which, how does this, and I'm throwing out these questions that you should be asking yourself as you are working through this area. Okay, so how do these modules load order is specified? Well, we do know that they are written into app Etsy config. And if you don't know that, well, then I think the dev docs say that. So we see app Etsy config. But then how, and this is a good question to answer, how is this order configured? How is this order configured? And to be frank, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know we delved into this in the expert developer course, and I worked on that middle of last year. But there is, we can dig in, and I give you the shortcuts to figure out where this is found, where the sequencing algorithm is found. But basically, it is there and it is readily accessible. You can step through it in your debugger. And I think actually the way I found it, well, actually, here's a good thing. Okay, so how do we find this? We can, when we install a module, let's think this through. When we install a module, it gets added here, right? We go create a new module. We say we run the CLI command bin Magento module enable, and then whatever the module name is. Well, how does that? What code is that triggered? Because that certainly probably has some connection to writing app Etsy config. Well, if we come down here into the vendor directory, Magento, let's search for module enable. CLI command. I don't think we're seeing it quite yet. Module enable. Module enable command. That seems about right. So we click into this. So we see a module enable command. That looks good. Is enabled. True. Abstract module manage command. Let's open this one up. And we see is enable. Okay, this is get enabled. Great. It's going to validate this. Modules to change, check constraints, set is enabled, generate. Okay. So I'm guessing if we step through this this CLI command with our debugger, again, this is why that debugger is critical. If we step through it line by line, I'm guessing we're going to find our answer as far as where this sequencer is found. So the key point here is, if I come across something I don't understand, I need to think of what will trigger this code, what will trigger this action, and whatever triggers it, that's what I need to figure out. That's what I need to dive into and figure out a way to trigger this so then I can understand how it works. Okay, describe Magento's directory structure. Determine how to locate different types of files in Magento. Where are the files containing JavaScript, HTML, and PHP located? How do you find files responsible for certain functionality? Okay, well, this one should be fairly easy. Use the Magento application, and I cannot stress how important that is. One of the keys that unlocked Magento development to me, and this is going to sound incredibly funny, but one of those keys is actually the Magento application itself. The Magento application unlocked Magento development to me, which was, it sounds incredibly profound, but it's surprising how few Magento developers are truly experts at the Magento application itself. So in order to resolve this, we can come into pick a module. Ideally start with one that's a little bit more simple. Let's see, what would be a little simpler one? We could just kind of look through these. Well, maybe module braintree. Well, there's a lot of directories in here, so maybe that's not the most simple one. Magento module captcha, there's less directories, so pick one that has just a few directories. Module catalog is going to have a ton of directories. See, so we won't skip that one. So module captcha, very good. Except the only thing is, actually, as I'm thinking about this is not necessarily the best one, simply because it is an older module. So that might not be the best one to implement. Now, one thing you can do if you want to see the newer modules that are built, newer meaning they should have better coding practices. You can install Magento via Composer, but also you can prefer source. And once you prefer source, then you can right-click, and this annotate with get blame will show you on the sidebar when a file was created. So if you look at registration.php in a given directory, you can see when it was created. So that should give you a idea as far as when the module was created. So you look for the newer ones. I know for sure. Well, actually, some of the newest ones that I'm aware of being created are these module inventory, and these use what Magento calls as best practices and I personally don't care for some of this. Basically, a whole bunch of classes, tons and tons of classes, which is exactly what they wanted to build, which is fine. Arnold asked about the CMS module. Yes, the CMS module is a great example, and I'm going to throw this out there. The CMS module, I'm glad you brought this up. The CMS module is excellent for providing simple instruction. And in, I know for sure the professional developer course, that course, we reference a lot of things out of the CMS module. For example, repositories, and I'm not going to get into definition of what that is, but repositories are very simple in this Magento CMS module. So if you're looking for an example, use the one from the Magento CMS module. Yes, yeah, exactly. Arnold, you are 100% right. The Magento, the CMS module is absolutely a great one to start with. Okay, so I think that pretty well covers what I was hoping to talk about there. Is there any final, well, let me double check. I think I had one more slide. Oh, yes. This is a question I have found incredibly helpful for me in my study. If I was writing a test, what questions would I ask? So remember, and that is based off of the idea that when writing the Magento test, this is a good portion of the blueprint from which questions are written from. So challenge yourself to come up and think through questions that might be asked. And those questions should be practical. They should be scenarios. So again, scenarios are very much slanted toward experience, testing experience. The longer you have been working with Magento, whether it be as a project manager for the business practitioner or building modules or debugging code as a developer, the longer you've been doing that, the more instances you're going to have that just pop into your mind. Oh, I know the answer to that question because I've done it. I fought through this. I figured this out. But the less experience you have, the harder these scenarios really are in order to be able to pass. So asking yourself, if I was writing a test, what questions would I ask in relation to each one of these elements on the study guide can be helpful. Another thing, before we wrap it up, and then we'll have a little bit of question and answer, but today I studied in our Slack channel, and I'm going to pull this up on our screen right here. Right here, you can see, today I studied, right there. I hope that you take the time to drop in your study feedback or what you learned in a particular day for this. Take your time to just say, hey, today I learned X, Y, Z. And I think you're going to find that helps you become more consistent. It provides you a goal, something, hey, look, I found this. This was really cool. And you might be of enlightenment to others. So take a few minutes, not even a few minutes, take 30 seconds, drop in there every day what you study, if you're willing to do that. And I think you will find it motivating, and you will motivate yourself. And I know you will motivate others in that process as you document what you shared here in our Slack channel today I studied. And if you do not have access to our Slack channel, please take a moment to send me an email or I guess that'd be the best way, joseph@swiftauto.com, and I will be more than happy to get you access to that. As we wrap up today, Don't forget to submit your scores in the certification challenge channel in our Slack area. I have pinned a link to submit your score. Obviously, this is valid only through for scores submitted from January 1 through, I think it was May 30th or 31st, whatever the last day in May is. So please submit your scores. That's how we're going to be able to know who we can enter it for winning the prizes. So make sure to do that. Submit your scores. And one other thing, Q&A. Any other final questions before we wrap it up today? I am more than happy to answer whatever questions you have. And at this point, just to let you know, I will be working very much toward at least a developer get together next Saturday, and I'll post out more information about that as the time draws near. Yes, Arnold's, the end of May is the cutoff here. Simply because I last year, actually, I had it to the end of March. That wasn't enough time, especially then we had COVID and all that stuff. So the end of May is our last opportunity to get a certification considered or entered into the drawing for winning those Apple Watches. Now, and the reason I have that is just because otherwise, if it goes into June, July, August, it's just going to get long, and between now and the end of May should be enough to pass just about any Magento test that is right for you. If the test is, well, if you are just getting started with Magento and you're trying to pass the Master Architect test, that's probably not enough time. But if you are looking to pass the Associate Developer, i.e. Professional, yeah, that should be plenty of time. In fact, you probably could be able to get that in just 2 months or so. Advice if you don't pass the first time. All right. Okay. The number one advice I give immediately after you don't pass the test is go down and write down every concept. Don't write the actual questions and answers down. That would be breaking the NDA. Well, I don't know how, I haven't read the NDA, how it works personally. If you did it for yourself. If you did it for yourself, well, just make sure you comply with the NDA. Whatever you do, comply with the NDA. But then write down every question and concept that you remember, and especially focusing on those ones that you had no clue about. And again, if whatever you do, keep within the NDA guidelines. Whether it's, and I haven't read that in a while, it might be writing down concepts is okay, but not the actual questions themselves. Whatever you do, just follow the NDA. So with that, what you want to do is to focus on studying those particular areas. You get the right answers to those concepts, those ideas. Make sure you find the right answers, but then zoom out. That is really, really important. Zoom out and say, okay, how am I going to understand what topic this is about? So go map it back to the study guide. Then take the study guide and say, okay, well, I think this is probably fits under objective 2.4. And let's figure out how we want to study this section. Okay, I'm going to go back and look at the commerce features for this. I'm going to go work through the admin panel. I'm going to go read another few articles about this. What can I do to become an expert? Because clearly I missed something. So I want to become better at this. So that would be my suggestion. Okay. Can the winner request a cash alternative? I don't know. I have not given that a consideration, but I will definitely give that some thought. That's a good question. Talking about local environment, Magento 2 recommends NGX. Saw that Mac most use Apache. Don't worry about that. Apache works great with Mac. Apache works great with Magento. Not interested in Apple Watch. All right. Well, we will definitely, if you're the winner, then we can definitely have a conversation. Let's just put it that way. If I don't want to create a product repository object, is the next best to use product resource model to get some information about a product? The answer is yes. Product repositories, and we're getting a little bit developer geek here. Product repositories is very expensive. Product repository was designed, and most all repositories were designed to load information and send it out to the API. When loading a product through the product repository, it's basically selecting all attributes, which is an incredibly expensive process. If you want just a little bit of information, maybe just the SKU, consider using a product collection. You use the product collection factory, you create that, you can select which attributes you want to select, and then you can return it. It's quite simple, very low overhead, and it works well. The other, if you want one specific attribute for a given product, you can use the product resource model, which has a method called get raw attribute value, I think is what it's called. There you can pass the product ID, you can pass the attribute ID or code, as well as the store ID. And in that case, you can select one attribute value. The other alternative is to create your own product resource model and create your own custom query. Now, keep in mind there, the issue is with Commerce. So Commerce does not have the primary key in Commerce's product catalog product entity table is not the entity ID. It is the row ID. So that can throw a bit of a kink into monkey wrench into some of your into a select there. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, come on, guys! You get bouquet of flowers. That's that would be a bouquet of flowers that's worth as much of an Apple Watch would be a huge bouquet of flowers. Let's see here. One other question: creating custom models. Should we always create an interface, repositories, and such, or should we use the model factory when loading an entity? Okay, another good question. Creating a custom model. I am going to say yes. I would recommend creating. Well, a model should always have the model, resource model, and a collection, that triad. Ideally, you would also create a repository. I find it simplifies loading and saving, and it makes it a one-stop shop for that. Plus, a repository is automatic. Well, is more enabled for the API because you can configure it to use the getList method would accept a search criteria class. And the CMS module is a great example as far as how to do that, which once you have the repository, then you can create a web API.xml file to connect into that, which then you have to go ahead and create your interfaces. So if you are just creating a model that is internally used, I would suggest using the repository. It's not a requirement, but certainly don't worry about creating the interfaces. Apparently, product repository fails Adobe Audit and Cart. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. All right, these questions. Charles say yes, definitely off Saturday meeting. All right, so let's consider it a deal, my friends. I don't think I have anything going for next Saturday morning, so let's do a developer certification get together. Come prepared with your questions. I will also create somewhat of a synopsis that we'll talk about. We'll talk through as far as preparing for the developer test. So then we'll dig into that. I guess one other question. Arnold's asked, how deep do you go on a given topic? Let's say you're learning required JS. My approach is to learn it on its own first and how it applies to Magento. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. What I suggest, and I don't think I specifically said these words, but let's actually jump back here for a quick moment. I did not say the words, I need to write a module. Writing code is the best way you can possibly work toward a certification. That's, again, why I created those two courses for the developer tests. And the number one focus in those two courses is writing code with a secondary purpose of passing the test. Writing code is your way to work out exactly what to do and how to pass this test. And so write code, create a required JS config file, build some of this code out on the front end, a custom UI component. All of this is absolutely critical in order to pass the test. So yes, definitely do that. And I think I covered everything I wanted to talk about there. So with that said, let's look forward to next Saturday. I am already looking forward to it. I love talking about developer stuff, and we got a lot to cover there. So yes, and actually through the week, feel free to ping me on questions that you have, and we will try to work through all those. And maybe we won't even get through actually looking at the study guide. We might just be answering questions all day for about an hour or so. So anyways, I wish you the very best of studying weeks. Studying 2 weeks if you're a business practitioner, and again, I'll be very interested if you have if you would like to delve into some business practitioner stuff too. I haven't seen as much of a interest of that in our comments here, but again, you know how to get a hold of me if you do have those any questions. Very good, everyone. Thank you for joining. I wish you a wonderful week, and we will see you, at least you developers, business practitioners, feel free to jump in too, but we will see you next week. Take care.